So the mantra for this evening is, it comes from Sylvia Borstein, who's a teacher in the Theravadan tradition. She's an American Dharma teacher. She was one of the founders of the Spirit Rock Meditation Center. I really like Sylvia's teachings, which I mostly have from her books. And although they're all pretty much online, I think it's on the Sounds True website. Like some of the Buddha's early women disciples, she's gentle and humorous and straight to the point. And you never ever get the feeling that she's trying to impress you with how clever she is or what a high level of spiritual development she's achieved. Anyway, Sylvia's mantra is, may I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. So let's just explore that a bit and how you might use it. If you just think for a moment of all the things that have happened lately that you didn't ask for and you didn't want, but they happened anyway.
Mm.
The moment when you realize that you might lose your job or lose your business because of the lockdowns, that you won't be able to visit family and friends who really need you. Or perhaps you realize that you're the one who really needs the help and some companionship, and that others won't be able to visit you. You might have realized that maybe you'll never be able to leave the country again. And that's despite the fact that maybe your parent or your child or your dearest friend is overseas. You might have realized that your own life or the life of someone who's very dear to you, it looks like it's coming to an end. So perhaps you'd just like to sit for a moment or two with your eyes closed, holding that difficult moment in your awareness, and just try repeating the mantra to yourself. May I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. You can try the first part on the in-breath, the second part on the out-breath. May I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. Then just open the eyes again. How does that feel? I find that this little reminder really works for me to call me back to my true values when I'm faced with some situation that I may not like. This little aspiration reminds me of my real intention and what I need to practice. Whatever happens in my life, whether at first it appears good or bad, may I not hide from it. May I not push it away. May I not try to get rid of thoughts, emotions, feelings in the body that I think are unwanted and unacceptable. Is it possible that I can turn towards this without negativity, without prejudging, but just with interest as to how it might pan out? Let's explore a little bit about what it means to meet the moment fully. Now, to do this, I have to tell you a little story about my son. I hope to God he's not exploring YouTube these days and comes across this. But my eldest son was a really difficult child. He was bright enough, but he was also a little smart ass. He could alienate all kinds of teachers. He was difficult. He was always very highly strung when he had temper tantrums when he was a toddler. And it was really difficult when he was at high school. High school, the parent-teacher interviews were just a nightmare. The economics teacher threw him out of economics after he explained to the class why the teacher was wrong about the 4 factors of production. The maths teacher passed him on to some poor, inexperienced beginner teacher after he showed the teacher a more efficient way of solving the equation. The history teacher told me at parent-teacher night that he thought Nathan was better suited to adult education than high school. So high school went on like this. Somehow he managed to get through it all. Somehow he managed to get through university. He collected an amazing girlfriend on the way. And they took themselves off overseas to Russia and got jobs as journalists, much to my surprise, I have to say. And he could be, and still can be, very witty and very funny, but at the same time, he can be very moody and very difficult and very quick-tempered. So I always used to worry about him quite a lot because he seemed to make life so difficult for himself. And I was talking about this one day to Bunte, and he said to me, look, just why don't you step back for a minute and look more at the whole of his life, instead of worrying about this latest particular incident, whatever it was, and I have forgotten what it was now. But he said, why don't you step back and look more at the whole aspect of his life? Like, he's about 25 by now. And he said, here he is, he's setting up a whole new life in a different country, a very different culture, a completely different language. And that seems to be going okay. He's got a full-time job and he's keeping it. He's in a long-standing relationship. He married this girlfriend that he met when he was 19 and they're still together. So he said, you can't be a complete wreck and manage to do all of these things with your life. So when you look at it, you think all of us, if we now focus in on one aspect of our life that might not be going so well, things can look like a bit of disaster. But when you look at the whole picture, it's a picture of a person who's functioning pretty well. And I've never forgotten that. It made me, it really allayed a lot of my anxiety about my son. And I found it enormously helpful. Thank you, Bunte. So when we talk about meeting the moment fully, as far as I'm concerned, we're talking about stepping back a bit, looking not just at, how this is going to affect me and whether I like it or don't like it, but trying to see it in the bigger picture. When we think about meeting the moment as a friend, what does that mean? Some moments are very hard to be friends with. I think at the very least, it means meeting the moment without anger. Sylvia Borstein tells this story about a friend of hers whose name was Jane. And like Sylvia was a social worker, Jane was a psychotherapist. And she was still practicing, although she was 75 years old, because she was the sole support of the household. Her husband was thoroughly disabled and unable to work. But she was planning to retire, and she'd been amassing a retirement fund, which she had invested with an investment fund run by Bernie Maddox. Now, I don't know if that name means anything to you, but back in 2008, Bernie Maddox ran a very big investment fund in New York. And of course, 2008 was the year of the global financial crisis. And so Bernie Maddox's fund, like every other bank and financial institution, lost an enormous amount of money. But Bernie, for whatever reason, did not admit to this. He pretended to be, much cluier than all the other bankers around, and he went on, instead of folding up, he went on running the fund. And as it turned out later, he used all of the remaining investment fund excuse me, to pay the interest to his investors until there was absolutely nothing left. So every last bit of capital that was invested with him was eventually exhausted. And that, of course, was Jane's retirement fund. So one day she gets a phone call that says, very sorry to tell you this, but every penny that you had invested for your retirement is gone. So here she is at 75. So not much prospect of continuing to work. She's got a totally invalid husband, and she doesn't know where things are going to go next. Like Sylvia, she's been a long-term Buddhist practitioner and meditator. And she said to Sylvia that when she was first told about this, she just couldn't take it in. As the reality sank in, she was fearful and distressed and anxious. But she said that despite all of these feelings, she never actually got angry. She said, who would I get angry with? What's the point of getting angry with Bernie? God knows what he was thinking. Should I get angry with the regulatory authorities because they clearly weren't on the ball? But then on the other hand, they were in the middle of a financial crisis too, and they were watching everybody go down the tubes. Should I be angry with myself for stupidly putting all my eggs in one basket? But she said we really needed the money and they were paying really good interest rates. She said, but right now I need to think clearly. I need a clear mind to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I just haven't got the mental space to be angry. So this is what I mean by meeting the moment as a friend. She, in that very difficult situation, she's looking for clarity, she's looking for understanding, she's looking for possibilities, but she's not making things worse by giving way to anger. We often talk about how much we've been practicing or not practicing lately. But in truth, we're practicing every moment of our lives. Something comes up and we have to respond. Life, as they say, is what happens while you're making other plans. And then something changes, something happens, and oh, what am I going to do now? How do we keep ourselves as clear seeing as possible in order to meet those moments? That's where our mantra comes in. We remind ourselves, may I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. The Buddha taught 4 noble truths. The first one, that life is challenging for everyone. Because everything changes, we all have to deal with the results. And the second truth is that we are not built to accept things that we don't like. To find out that things are different from the way that we want them to be is difficult for us. If it's possible to change them, then of course we will. But there are many things in this world that are difficult or impossible to change, at least in the direction that we'd like them to go. And we find that really difficult to accept. But the third noble truth is that peace is possible. If we let go of that imperative in our mind that says that things have to be different from the way they are. When disasters happen, when your house burns down in a bushfire, when you're diagnosed with cancer, when you're in a car accident, your first thought might be, why me? But when you think about it for a few moments, you realize these kind of things happen to all kinds of people all the time. These events are caused by all kinds of complex causes and conditions interacting in ways that we rarely understand and certainly have no control over. When we get over the initial shock, a more clear-minded response might be, this is never what I would have wanted, but it's what I've got. It's what I have to deal with. When you widen your vision from your own personal disaster, you realize that everyone suffers. Everyone has something to deal with. How can I be angry at anyone when we're all suffering and struggling in this human life together? The Buddha said, don't take my word for it, try it out, see for yourself. So next time you're struggling and in pain, try saying to yourself, this is not what I wanted, but it's what I've got. And see if that changes the way that you feel at all. Right now we're here together, working on our habits of mind. And just by practicing saying this to ourselves, this is not what I wanted, but it's what I've got. We're working on the Buddha's Eightfold path, the way out of suffering and towards peace. Specifically, we're working on 4 strands of the path. Developing wise view, or as it could also be translated, whole view. A practice of stepping back and looking at the wider picture. We're working on developing mindfulness, developing effort, developing concentration. We develop a balanced recognition of what's happening. Feelings of pain and distress arise. But then you focus on the breath for a few moments, and before long you can say, well, that really shook me up. And then before the mind starts to run away with itself and create dramas about what might happen next, you can come back to the mantra. May I meet this moment fully. May I meet it as a friend. And in the way of mantras, you can repeat it to yourself. You can link it with the breath. Breathing in, may I meet this moment fully. Breathing out, may I meet it as a friend. Until you notice the mind settling, the body starting to relax, to release the tension. So that you're able to meet this moment fully. While you're repeating the mantra to yourself, your mind is not off making up dramas about how things might go. Instead, we're starting to develop that clarity of mind that shows us that things change and I'm not in control of much. But I don't have to make things worse. I've only today with things as they are, so I might as well accept it, deal with it as best I can, and enjoy what I can. Insight arises, wisdom arises, if only for a moment, and enables us to meet this moment fully, to meet it as a friend. It becomes difficult to hold grudges and resentment. Everyone's stumbling along, trying to figure out how to do this really complicated thing called life. We're not in charge. We're subject to very complicated karmic forces and conditions. And to fight that is just to create suffering. This doesn't mean that we don't change anything. It doesn't mean that this is a wrong moment. This very difficult moment could be a great moment, a necessary moment, if it causes several people to realize we need to change things so this doesn't happen again. So next time you're faced with some bad news, see if you can remember, I didn't ask for this, but this is what I've got. Instead of fighting against this with rage and anger, can I turn towards it with wisdom, with interest? Can I ask myself, what can I do with this situation that I didn't ask for and don't want? How can I do the best for myself and the best for others in this difficult situation? Can I meet this moment fully and meet it as a friend? Now, if you like, unmute yourself and by all means ask me any questions or offer any comments that you want to on that idea, on that mantra. before we try some meditation.
So Sue, for meeting the moment, do we put emotion out of equation? Like sometimes it's hard that when people have facing challenges, big challenges, it's like there will be emotion involved.
Lots of emotion, yeah.
Yeah. So what is like, how to really practice to take that emotion out and really look at that moment?
I don't think you can take that emotion out, Meredith, because that if you look back on these kind of moments in your life, the thing that you remember is the emotion. Like Sylvia's friend Jane, who remembered that, when she got the bad news, she was just stunned. She couldn't think straight. That's what it's like. And it takes some time before the emotion drops enough for you to step back. So sometimes all you can do at that point is just to breathe. Just to breathe until the emotions settle a little, until the body settles a little, until you can start to look at this thing that you didn't want, didn't ask for, but has arrived. Yeah. And the emotions will come back as well. But
so is there anyone else who would like to ask Sue questions? Please feel free to ask them. Very rare opportunity.
I would, can I say something?
yeah, absolutely.
Just to know that when these really distressing emotions arise, to learn or to know that it will change, it will pass.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was huge for me to be able to really employ that in really difficult situations and not have to give in to just runaway rage and anger and more, distress,
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that is the really good side of impermanence, is that the terrible things pass as well.
that we are subject to conditions, and conditions will change. It's quite simple in some ways, but when one is consumed with dreadful strong emotions, that is not, hasn't always, for me anyway, been so easy to remember. But it's something that I've been able to practice, and it's been hugely helpful for me, to know this.
That's good, Murray. I'm glad that it's coming back to that question of the huge emotions that sometimes come up at this time. I'm not suggesting that our aim is to immediately change them. The first step is always to recognize what's here. To recognize, look, at the moment, I feel so stunned, I can't think. So I'm definitely not going to make any decisions right now because my brain just isn't working. Or at the moment, I am terrified. I can't think straight about what might be in front of me. So again, I'm recognizing, acknowledging that fear. And right now, I'm not going to do anything until that
Yes.
subsides somewhat.
Mm.
Yeah. So the first step is always recognition, acceptance of what's here. And gradually, with that acceptance, often comes a bit more peace, a bit more quiet. Gradually, the ability to think comes back, and you've got a bit more space with which to deal with things.
For sure.
Frank, are you saying something?
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you, Frank. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for
We'd
that.
like to see you, Frank.
Yeah, I just can't see you, Frank.
First, if I may say a few words, I'd like to apologize for two things. Last Thursday evening, I was talking too much about my family's problems. And the second one is I forgot to shave tonight. I hope you're not seeing my face. And I'd like to thank Sue for the enlightenment suggestion how to react to all these problems. Luckily, these real bad moments very rarely come to our lives, but I went through that. So I can add a few observations to it. In the 70s, 80s, I forgot, when Mr. Keating was treasurer, we had the Pyramid Building Society in Melbourne and the Estate Mortgage Society. They always gave 1 or 2% of interest than the rest of the market. But then one day on the news, the news came that the Estate Mortgage Pyramid Building Society have fluent, or I don't know the proper English word, I forgot, no cash can be taken out from the society. I was watching my stomach churning up and getting sick practically. And it lasted 2 or 3 days. I had all my superannuation investments, whatever money I had invested there. But the worst part was when my wife heard this, she told me, you see, Frank, you're useless with money. You know, you always pick the wrong decisions. You should have gone to a financial advisor. Well, and then on the meeting, we called a meeting, and about 50,000 people were in it. 28 committed suicide. More than 600 million disappeared. It was a lovely Jewish family who done the same thing in Perth a few years before, but our dear politicians didn't give a damn about it. So when the moment of these shocks come, it's not just a few moments, but then it goes on, and then slowly we overcome everything because we get used to even beating. Humankind are like that. We get used to anything. Yeah, even when you are beaten, you get used to it. But the worst part of this is we always get used to the good things. But we forget that. When everything is going beautifully in our life, we get used to it very, very quickly as we get used to the tragedies and the problems. Like I've been married 60 years now. I was very young when I got married. I didn't know what I was doing anyway. I was 19. So I used to tell my wife, darling, it's gonna be 60 years this November. We got married. I was 19, she was 18. Well, I said, I never thought of divorcing you. Killing.
Oh, Frank. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else would like to share anything?
Excuse me, sir.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Josefa here.
Hi,
Yes,
Josefa.
yeah. And just wonder what are you going to watch if your feelings is numb?
You're going to watch numbness.
So just keep watching the numbness of the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's often what the first feeling is, because the thing that's happened is so big that you can't get your mind around it. You can't get your feelings around it. So numbness is often the first thing that you feel.
So it's kind of like a feeling.
It is kind of like a feeling, yes. Yeah. And you can just watch whatever form that takes for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think somebody asked me before that they are concerned. They say like they are emotionless. So it's like when something big happen or things like that, I don't know whether it's like they can look at things at a very objective way, or sometimes they themselves become a little bit worried that they say that I think we are very cold, like we don't feel anything because we are cold.
Yeah, I don't think that not everyone feels very emotional right away. As Josefa just pointed out, often the first thing we feel is numb. It's often a retreat for the mind rather than having to deal with a very difficult emotional situation to go and think, okay, what practically needs to be done? Do I need to, I've just lost someone very dear to me. I need to organize the funeral. Here's a list of concrete tasks. I can get started on these, right? And that's okay. If that's the way you deal with it, that's fine. You just acknowledge to yourself, the emotions around this are too big for me to deal with at the moment. I'm just going to work on the practical stuff. Later on, when all the practical stuff is out of the way, then I can think about what this loss might mean to me.
Yeah, we can have a kind of aversion to things. I think, like I don't know if you call it an emotional aversion, but I don't think people actually feel nothing. I think they just don't. They either don't want to see what they're feeling, or they somehow fail to recognize it. Anyway, that's.
Or it's too threatening to feel, because sometimes what you feel is so big that you feel like if you let it go, you might kind of smash everything around you.
Yeah.
So you can't afford to lose control in that way, that. So you push it all down and you say, I'm numb, I'm cold.
Yeah. But is it a right? I mean, like a healthier or the right way? It's like you're trying to avoid looking at it, or rather that you should look at it.
Meredith, we're all just stumbling our way through life. We can never be always doing the healthy thing or the best thing. Sometimes we're just doing what we need to do to survive. Right? And sometimes that is just arranging the funeral or feeling numb and going to work as usual, or, that's all I can say to that.
Yeah, there's a good reason for the pause button.
Yes.
Mhm.
Sometimes, 10 years later, you can come back to whatever it was and look at how it affected you at the time and maybe make some more sense of it and deal with yourself a bit more compassionately. Sometimes you can do it at the time, but not always.
Yep.
I was just gonna add, I was just gonna add, some meditation sessions, all I do is focus on feeling, or if there's a strong feeling or something, sometimes, like 15 minutes straight, I can, just focus on the feeling, and sometimes it's like that. That helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as what you're doing is focusing on the feeling and what it feels like.
Think of. Oh yeah,
That's
sorry.
okay.
Very often, hello, we cannot avoid the arising of unpleasant or unwholesome thoughts or emotions. But what is important, as you said just now, in reference to the Four Noble Truths, is we have to remember that in the Second Noble Truth, it is the clinging that causes issues. So if those thoughts of aversion comes and they arise, just now, what you alluded to in terms of friendliness, if we can change to friendly thoughts, then that makes the practice a lot easier.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I just noticed the time. So should we do some practice now?
Yes.
Okay. My screen is doing very strange things tonight.
They all do strange things too.
But anyway, we don't actually need a screen. So I thought that tonight I might introduce the practice with a little bit of yoga breathing. Because what I'm finding lately is that I'm either in a state of lethargy. I'm going around thinking, oh, I just made the bed, I think I need to lie down on it again. Or I'm in a state of agitation, like I've done nothing all day. I haven't achieved anything. I should be doing something, but I'm not sure what. So I seem to be fluctuating between lethargy and agitation. And if you're in anything like that sort of a state, the very best thing to do is a bit of alternate nostril breathing. Alternate nostril breathing is a basic yoga breath. If you've ever been to a yoga class, you will have done it, I'm sure. And if you haven't, it's very easy to learn. But it's a balancing breath. Whether you're agitated or whether you're lethargic and depressed, it can bring your energy back to a state of balance. And I find it's been really useful these last few months to do 5 minutes of alternate nostril breathing before I go into practice. So if you'd like to do it with me, fine. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. You just breathe in whatever way seems best for you. In this breath, we take it in turn to breathe in through each nostril in turn, and we use the hand to block off the nostril. So the thumb is going to be used to block the right nostril, and the ring finger is going to be used to block the left nostril. It's sometimes good to have a cushion in your lap that you can rest your other arm on, but I also just bring the other arm across the body, make a bit of a fist, and sit the elbow on that fist so that I'm not hunching forward. So we start off by closing off the right nostril and breathing in through the left nostril. Nice long breath, breathing in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Closing off the left nostril, breathing out through the right nostril, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Breathing in now, same side, breathing in on the right side, breathing in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Closing the right side, opening the left side, breathing out 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Breathing in on same side, left side, breathing in. Nice big slow breath. Closing off the left nostril and opening up the right one, breathing out. Nice long slow out breath. Breathing in on the same side. Big slow breath.